I think this is absolutely crackers. I wanted to write about this week, but unfortunately the editor thought one of my other ideas was better, so I can rant to you instead about it. Politics is completely the wrong place for a list like this because people have so many different incentives at play, right? It is a dog-eat-dog world trying to stab each other in the back to get in the cabinet. Could accuse anyone of anything and put them on that list and then ruin their chances of XYZ job, but also ruin the reputation.
Charlotte Ivers is the Sunday Times staff writer and TV critic, joining us once more, and Patrick Kidd, journalist and author, agreed to come back again, and we're happy about that. Who or what is the establishment? The question of our day today. In his resignation speech, Nigel Farage mentioned the establishment 3 times. When Prince Harry lost his security appeal last year, he described the court ruling as a good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up. Farage is an incredibly wealthy, Dulwich-educated politician, owner at the last count of 5 properties. Prince Harry is an old Etonian, son of the king. He's literally a prince. So if those two are not establishment, who in God's name is? Patrick.
Yes, I can be the establishment if you want. I'd love to. I don't think they would have me. The establishment is something to whinge about.
Yeah,
I think that's what it's become.
Yeah.
It's shorthand for 2 fingers to society. But they would say the Archbishop of Canterbury, the editor of the Times, the Director General of the BBC, members of the House of Lords are all the establishment. But actually, it's just it's not about who they are. It's about who their opponents are trying to present themselves as.
Yes.
And Farage is just a whinger, as is Harry.
Yeah, well, they both appear to be on the wrong side of history when it comes to the whinge factor. Charlotte, if Patrick has told us who the establishment is, can you tell us what it is in terms of what they hope to achieve, if anything?
the great they. I think there's something quite interesting going on here, and I'm going to attempt to take it reasonably seriously for a moment.
Come on, let's do it.
So, Tony Blair had a remarkable degree of success in the 13, 14 years he was in power at getting people who think like him into big institutions, people running the BBC, people running universities, people in all sorts of different kind of museums, cultural institutions. And the Conservatives looked at this and they were very jealous of it, and they sort of felt like he was turning Britain against them, kind of creating this structure of liberal leftyism, all this woke nonsense, and we're all apologising for the empire, da-di-da-di-da. And they were all really annoyed with it. And then there was a real moment, it was basically under Boris Johnson, where the Conservative Party sort of woke up 9 years into power and went, we haven't managed to do any of that. And they were basically really annoyed with themselves that they had allowed this kind of cultural capture to continue and not got any of their own people into cultural institutions. So Boris Johnson had a bit of a crack at getting people who think like him into some of these places. He succeeded to a small extent, I think, and it is a lot more balanced now. But this envy of Blair and what he had managed to do to the country, basically reshaping it in his image, I think never quite went away. And so when Nigel Farage talks about the establishment, I don't think he's talking about his bit. As Patrick says, that there are many establishments and you can always point at the other one that you don't like. He's talking about this sort of idea a lot of people on the right have, that the country has been captured by kind of wishy-washy liberals, mainly as a result of Tony Blair.
Because equally the left would say that the establishment is actually a right-wing creation, and those conservative forces who arguably have been running the country for many, many years, going back centuries, possibly, as you say, the Archbishop of this and the chairman of that, and that this is the Bank of England, whatever, that almost the smoky rooms, big decisions made by a small group of largely men. Establishment.
Yes,
a deep state
wasn't it wonderful
in
then?
Plain sight.
Wasn't the country well run back in those days? I mean, I would go back to having the country run by effectively hereditary peers, bishops, and the committee of MCC.
Yes.
And you can have women members of MCC now, so I'm pro-establishment. I think it gives people something to whinge about, and things got done properly.
Well, let's look at today's Sunday Times. Craig Brown has written about the term's origins. The journalist Henry Fairley first popularised the term in The Spectator in 1955, so that's where we're going back to. For Fairley, the establishment was shorthand for the whole matrix of official and social relations within which power is exercised. And if we take that as the definition, Charlotte, you're suggesting that it's malleable to a certain extent, that with the right person, with the right amount of power as Prime Minister, for example, you can stack it, the establishment, to be more in your favour.
I think you can, and I think there are sort of concentric different circles of establishments rather than one kind of great establishment that runs the country, as Patrick is describing. There was a day where you sort of went to Balliol College, Oxford, and then you ran the empire, and that was it was kind of 400 men it was just them.
That's the establishment.
Whereas now there are kind of rival establishments facing off against each other. I was sort of thinking about what I think it is to be in an establishment, let's say. I sort of think if something happens at a national level that you don't like or that is going to influence your life in a bad way, can you get to the person who made that decision? So whether that's, you see an article in a paper that you don't like, can you get the editor on the phone? If there's a government decision that's going to adversely impact you and you think that a minister hasn't noticed something, can you get to them? Because I think it's about how much control people feel they have over their lives, and some people have a lot more than others.
But then to hear someone like Robert Jenrick whinging about the establishment, a man who had to resign as minister because someone had got to him as minister, and Richard Desmond wasn't over. He was part of how that worked.
That felt laughable as a sort of an attempt to be anti-establishment.
Yes. The other thing I would say about the establishment is it sounds vaguely mafioso. A bit like the Crays were called the Firm. In fact, the royal family are called the Firm as well, informally, aren't they?
Much of a muchness.
If you're the establishment, you can get things done, as you say.
Yeah. It reminded me a little bit, I was thinking this last week of Animal Farm, the Orwell book, obviously, and when I was in university, I knew a lot of people who would fly the red flag, and then within a matter of a couple of decades later, when they've made their money and were in the big house, I thought to myself, every pig wants to be a farmer eventually. And the farmers were arguably the establishment, and then the establishment get kicked out and in come the pigs, they run the thing. So the establishment is cyclical. I think
it rotates, exactly, and trade union leaders can have huge salaries and big houses
and large cars. I mean that seems to be part of it. And then they become the establishment,
and then they control who gets promoted in the Labour Party, particularly if you're selected as an MP. That's because of patronage and things like that.
Yeah, and then you have people saying, I don't want to be part of it because it kind of suits my political purpose. Elon Musk, I'm against the establishment. Richest man in the world. I mean, it seems preposterous. Trump, bizarrely using it brilliantly, whether you like him or not, saying I'm anti-establishment, and yet there he is, coining it, £2 billion later. Elon Musk, Tony Blair. I mean, there's a cachet, isn't there, now, to say I'm not part of it.
There is, and Trump, I think, very much was correct to say that he wasn't part of the establishment, in the sense that his entire party were kind of desperately trying to stop him from getting to the position he is in now. And, you saw a real difference in his first term where he hadn't quite consolidated his power and people were within his administration working against him. Now, of course, he has managed to do that consolidation. He's sort of, again, created his own establishment of people around him, people in positions of government power, but also cultural power. Why is he having this big fight with the Kennedy Center? It's because he, like Blair, knows that cultural institutions are very powerful as well, and I think the politicians who understand that are very good at creating their own rival concentric establishments.
Well, I've just finished Robert Harris's new book. It's coming out in a month's time, called Agrippa, and it's largely about the Emperor Augustus, and everything you've just described there describes ancient Rome. So it was ever thus, arguably. Let's take a few messages. Johnny, as called, says, correct, Charlotte, Ed Vaizey is the expletive problem. I agree. That could be from Ed himself. Another from Keith says, isn't the establishment just a way of describing the British way? The background machinery of Britishness is one such suggestion. Okay, we'll move on a little bit, because Andy Burnham's team will consider a list of Labour MPs and ministers accused of sexual harassment and bullying drawn up by female Labour MPs and staff. The list reportedly already contains 30 names, including at least 3 senior ministers and 2 former, who've been accused of inappropriate behaviour. So let's talk about this and the list. How necessary is it, given it's been 9 years since the last one was compiled?
I think this is absolutely crackers. I wanted to write about this week, but unfortunately the editor thought one of my other ideas was better, so I can rant to you instead about it.
Come on, let's have a rant.
Well, okay, there are processes in place in a workplace, even Westminster, which has slightly weak processes. They are there and they've been getting better and better over the years. There are HR systems if someone's broken the law. There are systems in place to deal with that. There are also whisper networks informally of don't go near that guy, he's a bit of a creep, right? This is something entirely different, and in a way it's filling a bit of a void because those HR systems are rather weak. But politics is completely the wrong place for a list like this, because people have so many different incentives at play, right? It is a dog-eat-dog world trying to stab each other in the back to get in the cabinet. Could accuse anyone of anything and put them on that list, and then ruin their chances of XYZ job, but also ruin them reputationally. You mentioned the last list that went around Westminster. I was working in Westminster at the time, and it was mad because it had some people on there it was accusing of being rapists. It had some people, there was one couple who were two single MPs who were together, but secretly because, they didn't want that in the public eye. Yeah. It had other people who were just sort of generically called creepy. I remember there was one MP who I really liked who had this sort of Jilly Cooper-esque kind of bawdy nickname that it claimed people called him because he's a creep. And you go, well, if you're his wife or if you're one of his friends, you can't unsee that. Whereas it's just some random person has put this down. I could see no evidence for why this. I'd never heard anyone call him that nickname.
Well, so that list was compiled by researchers and young people in Parliament, wasn't it? Whereas this seems to have been a leak of the Whip's office. I mean, the Whips have long had a list of who's dodgy, and to be honest, they use that against them. If someone is known to be trouble or whatever, they will use that as blackmail to ensure their loyalty and stuff like that.
So it's a poorly conceived idea, endeavouring to be a good, we're clean idea that is really should be done with a more legalistic approach somewhere else. Is what you're saying? Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's completely true. I think there are processes in place for dealing with these things. If we found out that one of our colleagues was up to no good, we would report them to HR. I don't think we'd sort of create, be putting up posters in the lifts accusing them of various spurious things. But this list as well does have the same problem the one a decade ago had, which is it does seem to range from accusing people of genuine crime, phone the police please, to just being like, oh, he's a bit creepy. What do you mean, oh, he's a bit creepy? Do you mean that when he hugs you, he pitches his hand slightly in the wrong place? Do you mean that he's not safe in taxis? Do you mean that he makes weird jokes, or just like he's a bit odd? That's really unfair to try and ruin someone's career over generically a bit creepy. You got to be specific on these things, and I think I'm sounding very kind of on the side of the men here. It's also, it undermines women's safety and undermines women making complaints being taken seriously. If everything is sexual assault and everything is kind of pitched at the same level, then when actual serious things
you're debasing the currency of the serious crime.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, Patrick, have you thoughts on this one?
No, except that otherwise the Whip's offices do need to know about this, and I suppose what a new Prime Minister wants to do is avoid headlines. If something is about to come out, they need to know about it, if there's something serious. But, I'm not sure why we need to know about it. I'm not sure why this is a news story as such. I can understand this going on, but I don't think it is actually anything newsy.